Quit playing on your phone.
Oh, shit.
It's time to start the show.
What's going on, bro?
Who let him
What's
in
up?
here anyhow?
I don't know. I'm glad you guys showed up on time
I
tonight.
snuck in.
Doing all this work.
Dude, I just made it,
not getting
man.
a ton of action. That's all I'm saying. All right, guys. Tonight's show, HVAC software. And we've got a special guest that I'm just going to let everybody know we're bringing on. If you've been following his group, you've seen him toying around and you've seen the matrix and the coding going bananas. And if you're like me, you're probably wondering, what the hell is this all about? But damn, I'm curious.
This dude is some serious stuff.
Yeah, if there's one guy that loves HVAC more than all of us put together, it would be this guy. That's the arena I'm going to put him in. Welcome to the show, Michael J. House. What's up, House?
In the
What's happening?
house.
House is in the house.
Indeed.
House is in the house.
House is in the house.
How's the grapevine doing tonight?
It's good, man.
Doing better now.
Doing better now. That's right. Absolutely.
You've just bringing in here, you've literally doubled the brain power of this group.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. You guys give me more credit than I deserve, I think.
Power.
I don't know about that, man. So House, I know this is going to go, we're going to take so many rabbit holes during the show tonight. So I don't want to waste too much time. I want to let you take the show and run with it anywhere you want to go. I want to hear what you're working on, what's it going to do for us. Man, fill us in. Weird. And then I also want to know, like, if I ever want to like tinker around with coding, how do I get started? But we can get to that way later. Let's talk about what you're working on.
Really, I've just been working on bringing some what are called APIs. So they're things that other software developers could use to integrate tools into their programs more than using them or making an application for people to use. I've sort of realized that there's a lot of maintenance and stuff that goes into like the customer facing side of things. And that's the side that I don't really like to deal with all that much. And so I sort of decided to focus a little bit more of my efforts on some things that occur behind the scenes and just making sure that the math of everything is correct and hopefully give some other people a path to integrate some things. So my main thing I've been working on is Manual S, which I know there's a new version coming out, but it was sort of just laying the groundwork and foundation and getting the 2014 version of Manual S to work, and then I can update to the new version when it comes out. And so that's sort of what I've been screwing around with.
Okay.
They were saying that new Manual S was coming out, but what happened to that?
It takes time for all that stuff to work through the process, right? Because you've got, committees upon committees, and everybody has to approve it, and then it's a big
goes
long
out
process.
to public review. And
I was going to ask, does ACA do public review with their documents like ASHRAE does?
I believe so.
It's an ANSI. I believe that's an ANSI document, so they have to do public review, and they have to respond to every public comment or anything that was made on that. They have to have a response to that. That's part of the whole process with being an ANSI document.
And mind you, that's the word on the street from Ed, ACA Ed. So it's not like I heard that from Johnny Supertech or anything.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it was credible.
It was credible. Yeah.
We're going out on a limb here saying Ed's super credible though. And I know the real Ed.
the real ACA Ed.
The real
Jersey.
ACA Ed.
jersey at. Oh shit, there he is. He always poking up on me, man.
So, House, if let's say this API, I'm a non-coder, man. I've learned a lot from the development team of TEC. So, are you saying this API will live on the internet on a website, and then someone could go retrieve all of the code? Like,
Yeah. So,
how does this work?
Reel
Yeah.
that in for me, man, because I don't know what an
Both.
API. I know an APK.
So API stands for Application Programming Interface, right? And so no one really needs to know that. But so both the code lives on the internet where anybody could pull it down to their computer and run it.
Cool.
Currently it would only work on Mac OS or Linux, maybe Windows, but I'm not sure if the programming language I use works easily on Windows or not. But the idea is that there's a website out there and you can send requests to the website and it will give you back the response. So it'll do all the manual S math. When you give it the appropriate input, it sends you an output that you could then display to users or whatever you want to do with it. So like for me, I will use it and send data in a different way than a lot of other people will because of my workflows and being able to work in what's called a terminal, which is just faster for me to work. I can do everything on a keyboard, not click around with a mouse and use like a normal app or whatever.
So just to catch Brett up, he says, what system are we talking about programming? So I don't know if I want to butcher this. I'll take a stab at it. House has created a website where he's putting coding language that someone who's got another, oh man, House, can you give us an example of like a current company or a hypothetical company, what their use case would be? Like run us through a use case.
What I would hope would be Quick Model probably being able to integrate this, because currently they just do manual J, which they have an integration with Energy Gauge for that.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe they could have a module that implements manual S, and my program would be like the back end of that. Nobody would really even know necessarily except for the programmers at Quick Model or
so
whatever.
Just like what they do with Energy Gauge, it ran in the background with Quick Model.
Yeah, you would
kind of. Yeah, Quick Model actually does, or Energy Gauge actually does do manual S too.
So you're saying that you could offer someone a click button equipment selection based on the manual J. You know what I'm saying?
Not necessarily. Like there would have to be a little bit of user input, right? So like I don't have all the equipment data from manufacturers and stuff, so that's something that the user has to input somewhere in the request that gets sent to my server or whatever to get a response, right? Like so, and there's different ways of doing that depending on how the manufacturer's data is laid out, right? Like, so do they have in manual S, so they call it like one-way indoor interpolation, where you have to change the or the manufacturer's data may come at 67-degree wet bulb and 62-degree wet bulb, and you have to solve for 63-degree wet bulb. Or perhaps their outdoor data is at 85 and 95, and you have to solve for 90, right? And so that's one of the things that what I built does in the background for you, but you have to give it that information for it to be able to do math on it, right? Because the manufacturers just don't have this stuff publicly available where I could, send a request to their server and get that information or whatever.
Would this application run like I see what you're saying. You could run an interpolation right? If you have data points of 75, 80, 85, and you have data points between 75 and 80, you're going to interpolate between those two data points. My question to you is, will the software currently now, can you extrapolate away from what the manufacturer's data point is? Or
that's not acceptable in manual S, right? So it implements manual S stuff, right? So not necessarily. I mean, I could write a program that did that, but it would go against the rules.
It also is going to go against the performance of the equipment, because the performance of the equipment is not, it's non-linear, right? It's a curve.
Yeah, it's set at 110, right?
It would be a wild card. Like if we wanted to know the sensible heat ratio of a coil that's at a lower indoor dry bulb, let's say we wanted to see what the chart looked like at 65. What's the SHR of that coil at 65 degree indoor? It's not going to shake out to perfection because it's not a linear equation.
Yeah, no, it would solve that. Yeah.
The thing,
but it wouldn't be like currently it all the what wet bulb you're solving for is not a user's input, because that's a set thing, right? Like that. So generally you're solving for a 63 degree indoor wet bulb. Like that's not something
that's a given, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing I hear is that if you can take all this information in and you can take different inputs from different manufacturers, you can actually compare apples to apples, because not every manufacturer puts their performance data in the same format.
Yeah, that's what Alex Meany and Ed Janowick were talking about.
Yeah, that's a really good point right there.
Yeah, it's a big shit show out there.
I have had to go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's no set standard about how the manufacturers have to put their performance data out. They just randomly, okay, we're going to do this every 5 degrees or 10 degrees, or we're going to rate it at 95, 80, 67, and we're not going to show any data for anything else. But with what House is saying here, if they put, some data out even on both ends, you can interpolate in between those two and you get some apples to apples data between two different pieces of equipment. But
and it's some like pretty gnarly math, really, like that goes into it, So it's not, sort of like Eric was saying, it's not a linear relationship, and so it's pretty complicated, and you have to have multiple data points, right? Like, so you can't do it with just one unless that one is exactly what you're looking for, and it just makes sure it's within the percentage limits of oversizing or whatever. But it does some other stuff too that could be useful in other scenarios where so I'll calculate the balance point of a heat pump. I'm also planning on porting, I've already made like a psychometrics library, so you'd be able to do some other psychometric calculations and things like that, just sort of for utility purposes and things like that. So I just intend on probably dumping a lot of stuff up there, and people can use it or not, whatever.
So when you say, I was going to hit on a couple things. When you do the balance point of a heat pump, are we talking about the thermal balance point? And are you doing like
both? So thermal balance point is built in already with the manual S stuff, but I plan on implementing the economic balance point as well, and stuff for dual fuel.
Answer's yes.
So I don't have that implemented currently, but that is in my long-term vision or whatever. I just intend on having several different things that can be used. That one, just the economic balance point didn't fit into what manual S requires, which is what I started with.
Question about the thermal balance point. I've worked on that a little bit. And when you grab the data points for like 47 degrees and 17 degrees on like a standard heat pump, you can kind of run that equation on the XY graph, right? But when it comes to an inverter, isn't that going to shift? So I'm wondering, is like that equation, will it shake out the same for?
Probably not, but that's something that I would like. I don't know the answer to specifically. I'd have to sort of figure that out. And but I don't think that's the thermal balance point relationship is fairly linear, I think, on the way that it works.
I think let's bring everybody up
Interpolating
to
it.
if you're watching and what we're talking about, just to bring everybody up to speed, is like there's an equation out there that says give me the capacity at 47, give me the capacity at 17, and there's a lot more math than that, but basically it's saying plot that on a graph and we're going to draw a line and we'll give you the capacity, right?
Yeah, you also need your load, your heating load,
and design
so
temperature.
then it will tell you at what point you lose your heat pump starts to lose the war, and you'll need auxiliary backup heat, or
Right.
most likely, right? I mean, there's
But an
going to be other
inverter's
real world things that occur, but
that inverter is going to get to a point where it maintains for a little longer before it tapers down.
Still going to
maybe, or they'll ramp them up, right? Like some
Well,
of the
you're gonna- yeah.
inverters and heating, they run a higher RPM
Yeah.
on the compressor, and so that's stuff but that should shake out in the data of the 47 versus 17 degree number or whatever, and you could probably just, like, if you needed a third point, like, so maybe what's the output at 5 degrees?
Yeah.
And so then you
Where are the new heat pumps falling on their face?
what depends on the manufacturer.
I mean, it's all over the map.
I was about to say that's a loaded question. It could be,
And you have to define falling on its face.
Yeah.
What is that?
Like when the heat pump had too many drinks and it just fell right down on its face.
Well,
Tried to
that's
walk on
after
water.
that's after Joe
Flat tire.
That's after Joe Hackensack gets done not using his vacuum pump to install it.
That's a too many 4 roses at the Animal House falling on face.
Yeah.
So like
That is
like
interesting.
where all right, falling on your face. Let's just say when you're gonna start needing like 5 kW backup heat, electric strip.
Well,
or
it's
something.
dependent upon where you live and the load of the house. It's going to be different in Florida than it is in
Yeah.
Ohio,
Yeah.
right? Like, so
And-
that's not an answerable question.
It
Come
is.
up
It,
with a better question.
it even,
Hold on, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
and then it gets even dicier, man, because no equipment's going to match the load to the T. So if you design a system and it's 7% over
Yeah.
the J, well, now you have more capacity that's being carried at the design low. So, you know what I'm saying? If you're not entering that load in that design, then that's going to give you more capacity below what the matched perfect load would be. So there's another data point that's super crucial for figuring out what that balance point is going to be.
Well, really, the only thing you need to know for the balance point is your load slope on the house, which is there is so many variables to calculate that perfectly. But the way you do it is you pick a zero heat point, which a lot of times is like 68 degrees or something like that. Right. And then you pick your design, your amount of heat you need at your design, right? And you create that slope between those two places. And then
and you got to realize, like, per manual S, what we're trying to do is just get guidance on what size backup heat strips you offer the customer, right? Like, so we're
right.
it's all we got to put it in context a little bit here,
Right.
on what we're solving for.
And then
realistically, if you're doing backup heat, and I'm just going to throw this out there, if you're doing backup heat, there is no fixed outdoor temperature at which you should turn that on.
Yeah, for sure. Never turn it on. Like, just let the thermostat do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the most economical and comfortable way to do it is to let the thermostat do it based on indoor temperature, because outdoor temperature is not your primary or not your only load on that house.
And
Right.
And so
then-
there's basically, like Michael said, you're just trying to figure out what size to throw in it, and or how much. And the rule about bringing backup heat on is you bring the most minimal amount of backup heat, or not backup heat, but auxiliary heat, because backup heat is it when your heat pump quits. Auxiliary heat on that your heat package will allow.
And then the big question in that calculation is, we are all probably assuming that 60 degrees is our balance point, right? When we're entering in is when you don't need heat, you don't need cool in that equation. But if your house gets super, super tight, then that set point becomes more around 40 something degrees. Will that play a role in that slope that you're talking about, Eric? You're giving me that crazy stare. Like, what the hell are you talking
I'm not
about?
sure where you're getting this 60 and 40 degrees at.
He's just
It's
talking
60
about
degrees.
sort of like
You have
when
to.
you need to heat the home versus cool the home.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
So heating
So,
degree
I mean,
days.
yes, that
temperature.
is the zero, what you call zero heat point, which is where
Yeah.
the people and the appliances inside the house will carry the heat of the house.
Yep.
Right. And that's going to vary some from house to house, but most normal houses, 65 to 68 typically works really nice as a good starting point for
I
them.
think 68's probably on the high side. I think it's probably in the 60 to 65 range.
Yeah. My house stays fine at 60 degrees. I'm just saying.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, I do think it will change with the tightness of the house, but 40 would never really be the case, most likely.
Yeah.
Not unless you've got like a passive house or something like that.
Oh yeah, you'd have to have solar, what do they call it? Passive solar sort of strategy and stuff happening that
Yeah,
you're
and-
getting heat gain from other things.
And that's such a unique use case that most of us are never going to run into that for quite some time.
No, but it is
Barely use
super
the heat,
interesting.
so.
Because setting the balance point, I mean, how many heat pumps do you think exist right now where the balance point or the heating side of that backup heat is set like crazy wrong right now and are just
A lot.
firing away
There's
at
plenty
like
of people
35
that
degrees.
subscribe to the idea that, if it's below 30 degrees, you need to turn it to emergency heat or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's just a problem, especially people that they develop their opinion around the stuff from like the heat pumps from the 1970s or whatever, right?
Adam's being awful generous there with 95.
Yeah, I was gonna say so.
I was going with like 99.
Yeah. Dude, I said it was what last podcast, man. But everybody down here, they put a jumper on the thermostat from electric heat to W2, W1. They turn the heat pump and the electric heat on at the same time. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you guys turn your heat on like 3 times a year for 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah. So we get
Who
a
cares?
little short season. But the contractor was like, hey, we're going to turn on both. Let's call back. So I was like, well, it's bullshit, man.
So,
Like,
Mike, whenever
85
y'all
amps.
have that, do y'all have like blue jeans at y'all's house that y'all pull out from underneath your bed out of this old Tupperware container when it's like, oh my God, it's cold. We better get the blue jeans out.
I got that
Don't I
Ziploc bag, bro. Where you
Don't
put
I
the
have a
vacuum on
jacket
it.
somewhere that's for
Yeah.
this situation? Do we need to go to the store?
My jacket's 20 years old, bro.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, it's like-
my wife's great aunt came up from Naples one time for a funeral, and like the longest pants she owned was a pair of capri pants. That's all she had to bring up.
I'm still gonna get a heat pump though, man. I like, I don't like how the heat, just electric heat, just the heat
Well, the one
pump's
good-
where I
That
go.
would, it'd
One
be an
good thing about a
interesting.
heat pump down there is you never have to worry about it going into defrost.
Yeah, that's true, man.
I mean, it'd probably be worth it, but then the question for you would be, how much is it actually going to run? And then is its runtime worth the squeeze? That would be an interesting
Dude, that's
calculator.
it's so tough, man, because our heating season, because I'm climate zone 2, it's oh man, it's really close. And what about the extra my repairs? I got a reversing valve, I got an EEV on the outdoor condenser, and I got to worry about all this stuff coming up on 8 years, 9 years versus a straight cool. There's nothing out there, bro. It's a filter dryer I got to worry about and a big inverter board. That's my, that's what I'm toying with. So that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'll have to use Mike's Manual S. Figure that out.
So, House, let's jump back. Is this thing live right now? Is this thing active? Can someone go there?
It's been active for a while. It will go through revisions, but yeah, it's HVACmath.com. It will look cryptic and people won't understand it unless they're a programmer, though. Most likely.
Have you gotten what Russ King?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I talked to him a little bit online or whatever, but I think that everybody's sort of up in air until the new Manual S comes out, I think, which should be sometime this year, if I understand correctly.
Okay.
But so I think that there's just a lot with the SEER 2 changes and stuff like that going on. That
everybody loved that. That was like a party.
Yeah.
Yeah,
SEER 2.
Isn't Russ King working on SEER? Not SEER 2. Manual S with them over there? Isn't he helping write that? I think he is. I think he's got a leg in that for ACA. If I'm not mistaken.
It's what, like 4 a.m. over there? Let's give him a call, bro.
Yeah.
With Sun's
I haven't talked to him a whole lot about it, just a little online, but he was someone I had in mind, and a lot of it is for my use case as well, because currently I use the Manual S speed sheet, and it lacks some things that I want to do, and so like doing multiple systems, I have to copy the worksheet, and you can't share data between it very easily and stuff like that. And so I built this sort of for me, and then if it's useful for other people, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Is there what's the maintenance expense to do this kind of thing, man? Like, how much are you out?
It's only 5:30 in Cupertino right now, so let's call Russ.
So I got a question, man. This is a big throw out to the industry in my mind. Like this could grow and grow and grow and be something big. And you've probably got hours and hours and hours into this. But like physical money, how much money does it take to get this thing going? And like, do we all?
We all need a server that runs in the cloud. The server that runs in the cloud is like $5 a month or something, maybe, right?
All right.
So, aside from that, it's time. Now that would have to grow if you're getting, tens of thousands of requests an hour to it or something like that. But I don't foresee that occurring for a minute. And when it does, then you just pay more and start more servers up. And so then you can handle more requests or whatever.
And at that point,
we'll just set up a GoFundMe page. We'll hook you up.
I think so. I think you need
to. Now there is a feature I'm working on that will generate a PDF version of Manual S. So like you could send it a request, and it will send you back a PDF that you could then present to your customer. Now that has some more fees associated with each time it runs. It's a set fee with the software that I'm using in the background to do that. So that would be something that would be unfair for me to speak at how much that would cost, because I don't really know yet.
Yeah. So are you saying your company, are y'all going to plan on using that feature? Is like that's one of the features?
Yeah, I'll use that for myself. And so I would generally when I do the speed sheet, I have to export it to a PDF, and it doesn't have my company letterhead and stuff like that on it. And so I've generated some PDF templates with my company letterhead and stuff on it, so it just looks a little more personalized kind of deal. And then I'm going to work on sort of a generic one that other companies could use, and then maybe as part of their request, you could, attach an image or something so it could be personalized with your business logo, or something like that. And so
that sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of one of my thoughts. Like, because some of the things that I build are going to be specific to my company or whatever, but I also am trying to do it in a general enough way that it's can be useful to other people as well.
And you would just write that code, like copy the code, drop the code again, change some of the code to where it'd be generic, where you had it where it was not generic.
Yeah, it would be more of like you would send it with the request, and then on my end, I'd do the majority of the legwork for you, right? Like, so you just have to say, so if you didn't want the PDF, you just wanted the results of the manual S so that you could do whatever you wanted with them, display them or save them to a text file, you would send a different request to the server than if you wanted a PDF. Like, it would have the same data, but you may say, PDF equals true, and it would send you a PDF. And if not, it just sends you the data back, right? Like, does that make sense?
A-Team's going to try it out for you, Mike.
Yeah. We need somebody test running this thing.
Yeah, I mean, so part of the problem is it needs a front end, right? Like, so there's only like one person in the world currently that knows how to do it, and that's me, right? Like, so there's
not to be cocky at all, but there's only one person.
And I'm not saying that people
you,
could figure out how to use it or whatever, but it needs some sort of front end around it. It doesn't have that, right? Like,
so if you're on the show and you're watching, you're not Michael J. House. Let's just face it, right?
But you could, like, that's where we probably should get onto some of the tools and stuff that I think would be useful for people to sort of learn how to use, that I've taken from software development that probably seem scary to people, but I think would be very useful if we learned how to use them. And also, like, formatted our data in different ways or whatever. So
I totally want to hear, how do I get started? And I imagine there's some people watching who are like, how the hell did you get to this point? Right?
And if we got time, man, I want to talk about his Frankenstein furnace.
Okay.
So, I mean, how I started was I just saw problems that I wanted to automate in my business. Like, you have tasks that you do all the time and that suck, right? Like, I hate spreadsheets. They're awesome, right? I still use them all the time, but it's just like all the clicking around and everything just sucks, right? You know what I mean? And you also get to scale issues. Like, if you're working on like huge loads of data, they're slow, and you get that spinning wheel of death on your computer or whatever. It just sucks. And so you can sort of process that data differently. And so that's sort of how I got started tinkering around with stuff, and like, I broke lots of things at first, like, but that's where, like, today's day and age is awesome, because you can, like, purchase a cheap computer, like, server online for a couple bucks, so you don't mess up your machine. You can do all this stuff on someone else's machine and just kill it and start a new one.
I'm kind of lost here. Are you telling me, and the way you said it, I just want to like say it again so it makes sense. Are you telling me for a couple bucks, I'm going to rent a server from someone, and then I'm going to log into a website and use that server? How does that?
And then beat it
that's
up.
That's a bad way to do it, but you could. Getting started, that'd probably be how you do it, because you're not good at using some of the terminal and other tools. Generally, you would like I would create what's called an SSH connection. So you work on that machine, but it feels like you're on your machine, right?
That's some Edward Snowden type shit.
No, but it's all
it's legit though, right?
but if people got more used to using their terminal in their computer, or command line is what it can be called in. So SSH is like secure shell or something like that. It's basically just a remote connection.
Yes, secure shell.
I thought Jason was trying to shush you. So
okay, so you create a secure connection, almost like very similar to like logging into like a home-based computer for a headquarters, like a VPN. Like I'm going to get into that VPN.
Yeah.
Is that very similar to what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Except you do it in a terminal, which is just where you type commands, right? You can't see anything.
Yeah.
Really, you just see text.
For those of you who are used to it, think of DOS. That was a terminal.
Okay. Yeah. Now it's all.
I can show you my terminal if you want.
I mean, terminal is just, and you can pull it up on any computer. It's literally just a command line where anything you want to do, you type in a command, which is all that realistically clicking an icon on a window does. It is a command and an execution.
It does way more than that, most likely, but in simple terms.
That's kind of the simplified way of doing
it. I think we need the layman version for sure.
Yeah. My son logs my computer on every night I come live. So
well, you're just not a good candidate. For sure.
I'm that back of the classroom guy.
So some of the other things are what in programming world you call version control, right? So it allows you to essentially create snapshots of files, right? And you commit them is what they call it. It's weird syntax and sort of hard to get started with. I don't want to make it sound hard. It's not very hard, but like if we adopted things like this, you could become way more like you can move machines and have all your stuff a lot easier. Like the things that you want to keep out of cloud storage or whatever, maybe, or if we just represented some of our stuff in text, and then you can go back and search through that history and pull up another version of it, but still have your current version and do different things with it. So that's another item. It's called Git, that I think is a useful thing to get started at, that you don't actually have to program to be able to use. You do have to likely use a program or know how to use your terminal, but you could start keeping version copies of things and not be afraid of messing things up or not being able to get back to a version that works.
So I gotta ask, if someone wanted to learn, like just take baby steps, is there like a YouTube person who's like you followed to get started? Like, where do you go get this education to baby step in? Like, I don't want to go read a coding book. It's not me. But let's say I want to go watch somebody's video content. Like, how do
I mean, so
like a Mark Rober or something like that.
Yeah,
I watch this guy named Network Chuck. Is kind of like a beginner level thing.
Network Chuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to answer. There's tons of programming YouTubers out there, right? And so, but there's also like 9 million programming languages, right? And so it's hard. So I would recommend starting with things like Bash. So those are
programming languages. Are we
Yeah,
talking about
programming
it? So
language.
Bash
Bash
is a programming
like
language.
comes on like every computer. When you open up your terminal, those are the type of commands you type in, are generally some sort of shell command. So there's all kinds of shells. There's Bash, there's just SH, ZSH, Fish, a bunch of shells, right? So, but those are what you use in your terminal, and they're sort of really basic and hard and cryptic to understand. But good to know, like, just how to list the directories on your computer or whatever, and like find things that way. And so it's a very like low level language, and but that's probably where I'd sort of start taking baby steps at,
Mhm.
and then get into something, maybe like should be a lot of like Python content out on the web. That Python is used, a huge programming language used in a lot of things and a lot of data analysis and stuff like that. Personally, I write everything in Swift, which is an Apple developed language that works in multi-platforms, but basically every Apple program that you have.
Yeah,
It's
just to
like-
let everybody know in the chat, Mike hates anything Windows. So
Correct.
I'm just shooting to, public service announcement.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I remember because I've been in your group, Mike, for a while. And I remember you were working on something that was I think it was a Raspberry Pi controller to control some of your automation. Is that right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
was
so,
going on there, man? That went over my head a little bit. So
Yeah, I mean, those were they weren't really Raspberry Pis, but so yeah, I did some IoT type of things, right? And so that was to control my Franken system or whatever. So that was sort of a fun experiment.
did it work out?
Yeah, I mean, it works now. The problem with all that stuff is like I threw it together really fast. And so when I have to go and change it or implement something,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll know what it all does.
So-
You know what I mean?
So
that's
what
the-
you did in the beginning? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're saying you didn't have good version control on that?
No, I do have good version control. It's just not good notes on it, right? Like, so that's
right.
the hard part.
Fair enough.
That's
know
why. That's
know
why
that-
we know nothing of what Nikola Tesla did.
I know this worked. I know I had a great idea, but I don't remember how in the heck I got there.
That's part of the problem with coding, is that you often do things that you don't look at for a long time, and then when you have to go back, it's hard to re-understand what your mind was thinking back at that time, right? Like one of the first things I built is actually our PO system that we use at our company.
Wow.
And like at some point I need to update it. Like it's ran for 10 years at this point, right? And
That's
I have
impressive.
no idea how. Like,
That's freaking awesome, dude.
Is it a random number generator? Like when you say you wrote a code for your work orders, like we always worked off PO numbers and they ran in chronological order.
yeah, that's
But-
how it works.
But it would have been
chronological.
nice. It would have been nice if we had a software that said if a guy could create a job in the field. Like here's how we used to operate. If a job came in, that job had to be sourced to the office at some point, so a job number could be executed. But if a weekend call came in, we would just fill out paperwork with no job number, and we'd play catch up Monday morning. But it would have been super
Oh,
cool
man.
if everybody who ran a job and just created a ticket would have got a job number, but there wouldn't have been no overlap or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, now your CRMs do that. Like House Call Pro does that. POs are different. Like, so POs are what our guys give to the supply house or whatever. That all gets ran through the office. They can't generate their own. I don't trust them necessarily to do that, because that data is helpful for us when we're matching stuff up accounting wise, right? So,
I
Yeah,
feel
take pictures, man.
feel your pain, Ty.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. All right.
No,
So
but even like people like Ty who may struggle and things like that may be able to focus on programming type of things. You know, you never know. There's a lot of people that are able to hyper focus on other tasks or things. So I think that people shouldn't be afraid to get in and try things. Really,
I'll tell you right now, coding is fascinating, and it's intriguing, but I haven't ever spent any time behind it. But I want to, but it's just one of those things. It's like I feel like if I could just get started, I could run, but I just don't know exactly like kind of how to get started. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
It's also hard because the beginning tutorials sort of suck a little bit. Like, so everything has what they call a hello world, and so you get something to say hello world, right? And they're like, oh, congratulations, you're a programmer.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, that's not very useful. You know what I mean? I need to
Yeah.
like do something real, right? And that's more of a challenge and more of a challenge to sort of figure out, a use case or something like that. To do apps are another like sort of good one, maybe to like start. That's like better than a hello world application.
This is a good question, I think. If someone wanted to get started and they're in the HVAC industry, what do you think their goal should be for round one? Try to accomplish this goal. Like programming. If I was going to start tomorrow and you said, hey, in 3 months, you should be able to knock this out. Write a program that does this for you. It'll be useful for you. You're going to want to use this. Boom. What would it be?
I mean, that's a hard question because
That's another horrible question, Chris.
No, I didn't mean that. It's just very hard to answer because, like, most likely you wouldn't build something like that you would use. Like, you'd have to have a specific use case that you're trying to solve, right? Like, and that's going to be different for everybody, I feel like, right? So I'd probably start with an application that you won't end up using, like a to-do app or something like that. Like, because Apple reminders or, Google Calendar or whatever is going to do better than you're going to do for something like that, right?
What do you think about IFTT?
Idea of how all these components sort of fit together and work. And so, and like learning how to, I'll have to check those out. I don't think I've looked at Harvard online, but at this point I know enough that I just I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to those online content things. But
yeah, well, I just heard that
everything I have will be focused on Swift. So,
Mike, have you heard that Haven is kind of linking up with Yoo-Hoo, and they're kind of working on that IFTT thing, if then that software? Is that something really hard to develop for the IFTT?
I have no idea, but I mean IFTT is like a web-based thing that you can use. So you could create your automations like anybody should be able to do it, right? Like, so it's
I've done IFTT. Like, it's not hard.
It's
a non-coding situation.
Gotcha.
I've
more
had
homeowner base. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Like, if anybody that's listening is a Mac user, one good thing to get started on sort of learning programming skills is an application that's called Automator that comes on your Mac and allows you to use like this drag and drop thing to create little programs and applications, right? That's actually how I first started. Like, I got I made this little program that would like copy something or take several PDFs and like bundle them all up into one or something like that. I forget my use case back in the day or whatever, but like it would just copy a bunch of these PDFs into one document or whatever. And you can do other things, like you could set it up to like click a couple buttons and it opens up all your applications you use for work or something like that, or, doing little automating tasks of your computer. I mean, I think those are the things that you get the most use out of if you can automate things that you do that you don't enjoy doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, man, this show's heavy. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
Heavy, but good. All right, let's go to the Frankenstein.
Elon Musk.
And I know. Yeah,
I want to
Yeah.
throw out one thing real quick because we were talking about Manual S earlier. So I just looked it up here. Manual S went out for, now anytime you have an ANSI approved document. So ANSI has standards for how the document has to be reviewed, created, managed. It has to go through review periodically. So the Manual S, the new Manual S, went out for public review and comment period between November 25th of 2022 and January 9th of 2023.
A
And
public
now
review. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Just pass it.
it's too late.
Yeah,
So public
it'll
review's
come out in
over.
the fall.
Yeah, public
Is what I
review's
heard.
over, but now if any comments were made during that period, they have to go back and answer every one of those comments and respond to every one of those comments and potentially make any other changes if it's deemed by the committee to be necessary.
Let's
And if
jam
they-
up the comments on that. What do you
if
say?
they make a change from the first public review, does it have to go back out for public review again?
I believe so, yes. I don't know the real fine points of that language. It may depend on some different things, but yeah. So if they make any further changes, I think it has to go back through another public comment period. So typically they won't make changes. Most places won't make changes in that, after that period is the way I see the process happening in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But there was, that public comment period, and now it's back responding, and then the next step would be publishing, would be my, or final approval and publishing would be my understanding. So
I'll be
So
honest
guys-
with you, man. When I started doing
Well, being he's frozen, I'm going to take over.
he's as
cold
cold
he's
as
frozen, we'll just talk
So-
shit about
so
him while he's
I
frozen.
think Kevin Hart's watching the show, man, because he dropped me a link. He said CS50's Introduction to Computer Science. I don't know if I said that right. CS50X? Anyway,
Dude,
the website.
I hooked up my Haven and I hooked up my
.edx.
Haven finally, bro. And I get, what do I get? I get
frozen
Right.
again.
I was going to say, since he's frozen again,
We should
somebody else
just give
go.
up.
I'm like, what's going on, dude? Kevin hit me up about my Haven. He's like, your humidity's horrible. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, Kevin? So he helped me walk me through a couple of things, but that was cool, man. Programming, man.
Yeah, that was a great story.
That's freaking nuts, bro.
Yeah, let's try it again without the pause.
Yeah. We didn't catch anything you said.
Hey, Michael,
Shit.
we got to work on your Wi-Fi there, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I need a programmer.
He had to move to Ohio, I think.
Hang on.
But
hang on. We need to get you
did you
a
hear the
cable.
part? I need a LAN.
You need a LAN bad.
All right.
Give me a LAN.
So-
Can you hear me now?
I do want
Can you
to.
hear me now?
We can hear you, man. But we know
All right.
you wanted to talk about the Frankenstein system, and I
Yeah,
know
man.
we're getting close to the end. This was super heavy. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch this show and like soak like a sponge and take notes. But I do want to hear how the Frankenstein's working out for you, House.
Well, I mean, it's been doing pretty well. Of course, it only does cooling, so I
Oh, I
don't
thought you had
have
put
that.
I thought you put a hot water hydronic coil in it. No.
Yes, I haven't hooked it up yet. Like,
Okay.
so that
You're probably
like my baseboard heat is just super comfortable, so it's hard to like find the motivation to actually hook up the hydronic coil in it.
Yeah.
You know,
So you put the coil. trying to remember. Did you put the coil in it during install, or did you come back and put it in later?
I put it in. It's a hydronic air handler, so it's like pre-built into
Oh, that's
it,
right.
So
Yeah.
the evaporator coil is external of the
That's right.
air handler.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that part.
It looks like a furnace.
Ty, that's an accurate description of Michael. Michael's.
Yeah, that's what I would like a.
R2D2. I was just trying to say, Kevin Hart hit me up. I put my Haven on. I went online a couple days ago. Still?
Oh, yeah.
Still, man.
Just sit there and look pretty.
Yeah, man. Just drink your 4 Roses. You'll be fine.
Yeah, see, that's
All right.
the problem.
Yeah, I mean, so the Franken system is doing pretty good. Like in the midst of all that, I've sort of like torn my building half apart, and so it's hard to say how much other things I've created in my
Yeah, you've been busy, man. Overhauling the
looking at
house.
the building. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I saw some pictures. You solved a major issue in your house as well while you were tearing it apart. So,
Yeah.
good job. Yeah, definitely. Way to go.
Go team.
Yeah. Are you benchmarking infiltration as you like before and after when you're doing all your work, or is it not something you?
I mean, I have before numbers. Currently, the after would be horrible because I've made a lot of connections to other spaces that like probably had connection before, but they were much smaller, right?
Yeah.
Now there's walls missing and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I intend on doing that. Like part of this, the long-term goal is to seal everything up, right?
Are you gonna feed that new space you're connecting to more? I've been to your house, so I know it kind of what you're doing. You're taking over that other space. Are you going to try to feed that space with the Frankenstein system as well? Is it going to?
It already fed that area.
Yeah.
So, but actually, no. I'm trying to remove that, so it doesn't.
I got you.
That area, and that area will be more of like shop area for me, and so I want it to be isolated, sort of from the rest of my house.
Gotcha.
Because I'll be doing woodworking and things like that, and so.
Just so let's back up just a minute here. Talk about the configuration of this Franken system real quick, because we may have some people on here that haven't followed along to understand the exact configuration when we talk about this.
Yeah, so the primary thing is it uses a coil bypass, right? So I move 3 tons of air on a 2-ton system, and I can control how much air is going over the evaporator coil versus how much air is bypassing the evaporator coil. And so it allows me to have more mixing and longer run times in the mild times a year, because I can basically make my system have anywhere, like air conditioning is single stage. It can run full blast, and I can either have a 5-degree delta T coming out of from return to supply, or a 20-degree, depending on how I change my damper configuration. So
how do you, when you're doing that, how are you controlling the compressor? Are you actually cycling it on like a freeze stat or on time, or how do you do that?
The thermostat just tells it to turn on and off. So it's all just trying to maintain a set point.
Okay. So you're not.
And my software is janky because I wrote it. And so currently to change damper positions and stuff like that, I actually have to manually do it. Like, so it's all got a web interface on it, so I can just like do it from anywhere or whatever, but I have to toggle little buttons to change damper positions or fan speed, but generally I just leave it on the highest speed and bypass all the time, unless it's like 95 degrees out, and then I lose the war on sensible temperature, and so I have to bypass less air and get more of a delta T across the system.
So you kind of need like a Y2 on there that just closes that damper a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, part of me is like living with it to try to figure out what the best setup is before I like finalize how my software controls it, kind of deal. So I just had to like make the easiest first step kind of deal.
Are you planning on, I got to ask, are you planning on, after enough research on the Frankenstein, to write an algorithm code that someone could use if they decide to install a bypass system? Is that what's going to come out of that?
I mean, it could do that for sure. I don't really know, right? So like I did the Franken system to see, like, because it seems like a cool idea, right? You know?
Yeah.
And I think that it has all kinds of use cases, but like, you know, people are wusses, and so there's low odds that it'll get adopted.
Yeah. No, I
But
think
it has all
like,
kinds of use cases, I think.
well, I know we talked about this one time. One thing you learned is through that process was the bypass. You thought it kind of had to be a certain size duct, and then you were like, "Man, I could have made that way smaller."
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was
Yeah,
that was intriguing.
Yeah, like part of my thought is like you could have a single damper setup that, you know, it controls like, you know, how commercial dampers work, that you can control the bypass versus the coil all with one motor, right? So like I think that you could simplify and make a version that, you know, is sort of an off the shelf thing that somebody could implement all of this stuff. That said, I just, you know, we can barely get people to install equipment properly now, right? So if you make it more complicated, then, you know, that.
They're just missing your algorithm, man. That's what it is.
I almost think there is a use case for this, especially when we're seeing more of the inverter units that are coming out where they modulate based on airflow, right? You know, they change capacity based on essentially suction pressure or suction saturation temperature. And you can control them off of regular thermostats. So I think there may be a good use case for this in the future.
Dude, we gotta have a
like, I mean, it makes my single stage system act like an inverter basically. Like, and I have, so, I mean, there's at least like 25 modes I could have.
I think it's I think what Eric's getting at, tell me if I'm wrong, Eric, as houses get tighter, the idea of bypass air to get a lot of air moving is going to be maybe something we're going to have to look into and design more for that type of install, especially for the person who can't buy the inverter system. And I don't know, is the inverter system even the best system in that application? Would we not want a single stage system with bypass that can, you know, keep a constant volume of air moving around a really, really tight house? That's an interesting debate.
Yeah, especially with Haven, man, because he always wants the Haven running on, you know,
personally,
amount of airflow.
I'm actually, I've got all the pieces, haven't got it done yet, but I'm doing something very similar to what House is doing in my own house because I need the constant airflow. I need long throws out of my registers to be able to condition the house well and control that surface temperature in the house, your mean radiant temperature. And that's what I want to do. So if I lose that velocity, and when I started looking at my own house, I was like, if I start losing velocity out of the registers that I'm using, I'm not going to be able to handle and get to the outside of the house like I want to really well.
Yeah,
so
that's manual T talk, right?
Yeah, more or less. It's basically just looking at the throw on the registers, like how many CFM you have coming out of the registers. And I mean, you grab a register manual, a register catalog, and you can look at that throw. And I was like, okay, I got to have this throw up. And the only way to keep that throw up is to keep a higher volume of air total through the system.
Right.
I don't need that capacity. So on my own, I just selected a Bosch unit because I'm going to bypass air around the coil. Well, by doing that, I'm dropping the amount of air going through the coil. So I'm dropping the capacity on the unit, and I get much longer run times on the unit.
So you guys are doing the same shit?
Basically, yeah. Little different. I mean, I don't have the control system that
Air handler and stuff.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm just using a conventional air handler, but I don't have the control system that Hausch has unless I get with him and figure out like how he built his and the components.
Yeah, I'll make you one.
I'm not a programmer like he is.
Well, I'm glad we set you two up.
The control part is
match
actually
made in heaven.
very little software. The mainly what I wrote is like a bunch of logging stuff. So it logs a bunch of temperatures and stuff. Like the actual control logic is like 50 lines of code maybe or something. Like it's not very big.
Yeah, he's being modest.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Like this stuff all exists, right? Like so,
Yeah,
it's all. I use parts that I just had to put it all together, right? You know, which isn't easy. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like this stuff exists in the home automation world, right? Like where you can do this stuff easily. There's all kinds of tutorials and stuff. It's not that complicated. So, like going back to things we were talking about earlier, that's a good route to get into, because like you actually program, like, so if people check out Home Assistant or something like that, you can buy sensors at local hardware stores and stuff and put them together and you basically do like configuration files, which is sort of like a form of programming, and it just does its thing automatically and sort of gets you into a thing with low
thanks for coming, whoever that
overhead
is.
Sort of deal. Yeah, this is a rough episode for your first time. Sorry.
No joke.
I'll tell you this: the last time I programmed something was on an Atari 520 ST.
What's an Atari?
Wait, I didn't even know you could program an Atari.
No,
I know that was a thing.
That's not the game computer. That's an actual computer.
Oh shit!
Atari made computers, the 520 and the 1040, and I don't remember the other one.
We're talking like
you're showing your age right now.
That was
85,
late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
that's what I thought.
They had.
I want to have Mike back
you
on.
Could call spreadsheets programming.
They had 3.5-inch floppy drives, so they were moving forward. And honestly, Atari had on those computers, they had some earlier versions that were command line, but those computers actually had a graphical user interface and a mouse way before Windows did.
Damn.
So Atari was where it all started.
Yep.
Atari made the game.
You want to learn how to not use your mouse. It's so much more productive if you can learn how to
will agree with that.
Shortcuts and use the mouse as little as possible.
I'm getting the implant behind my ear from Elon Musk, and I'm not going to use a mouse. I'm just going to think about
plug in. It knows what I want it to do.
You know what I want to see happen, man. I want to like software to get to the point where it's like
Neuralink. That's what it's called.
Yeah, like I want Iron Man stuff, dude. I want to put on some.
That's
gloves.
what it is. Jarvis is inside your head,
dude,
son.
This is what I want.
You're gonna have that just jacked right in. He's got monkeys. Monkeys right now.
I want to be able to
look at the computer,
pull up a building and stretch it and be like, bam, there it is in 3D hologram, and I just like make it happen.
Chris, that's what I'm telling you. Elon Musk has got monkeys.
Likely happen in our lifetime.
I think so. I think that would be super intriguing.
Like I bet that stuff occurs in the next 10 years,
dude.
Most.
In the next 3 years,
really,
Mike. They got monkeys playing Pong right now with Neuralink.
Well, there's like rumors of there's been rumors for years of Apple coming out with a VR headset or something, or an augmented reality deal. And
Mhm.
once they do something, I think it'll blow up.
Yeah, that was when
Oh,
Pokemon
yeah.
Go was popular.
Man, if
Like,
Apple
there-
creates a
there's-
headset, I'm totally in
there's-
for it.
It may come out like this year. Like there's rumors
Yep.
that it may come
They're
out
gonna-
this summer.
Yeah,
They're gonna
those,
get
those rumors have been going on for the past like 5 years, though, haven't they?
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm,
But I mean,
mhm.
seriously, though, think about what Apple did for the smartphone market. If they can turn around and do that exact same thing in the virtual reality
Yeah.
market, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, the iPhone
Well, you know what
came out in
they're trying to do is they're
2007.
trying to put
That wasn't
Steve
that
Jobs
long ago.
into the metaverse. And once they do that, Steve Jobs' brain gets implanted, they will create something really viable. That's my prediction for Apple.
All right, guys.
Are
We
you
gotta-
saying it's after 9 o'clock and we've
I just looked at the
Past
clock
that.
and I'm like,
Come
whoa, we're
on,
steaming
bro.
ahead. We're just gonna have to get House back on. And
Dude,
continue.
so what? Overtime's the only one that's supposed to go overtime?
That's right.
Shit. We gotta be what would we call HVAC on time?
Yeah, one time.
All time grapevine.
That's
But dude,
right.
Mike, I want to have you on. I want to talk about all the different inverters, man, on how they operate. I know Bosch operates off of
I'm
superheat.
not the person to have on to do that.
Well, I'm gonna have you
Not
on.
fair
And just
about
it'll be a
that
bad podcast. Come on.
I hear
I
you.
don't know that much. Like that's not my.
Jim Bergman's not gonna want to talk about it.
I don't know. That
do you
sounds
wanna know?
interesting.
what do you
We'll
want
have
to know?
You know, we need to get an engineer who works for an equipment manufacturer to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. I want to
Plug
have
some-
Dustin.
plug
I want to have
somebody.
Dustin on though, bro.
The thing about all that is if you get an engineer, he's going to be able to talk about how their inverter operates, not how like
Exactly.
variances.
Not
wanna
if
know
we find
what
the guy
all
who
of
got
them do.
headhunted 2 or 3 times. Right?
He worked on all of them.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
Yeah.
I was here and then I was there, and then
Yeah.
they plucked me over
That's
here. We need to
why I
find
want on the
that guy.
damn show. Somebody that
We're
knows
gonna-
all of them.
Yeah, we're gonna find that guy.
I mean, realistically, a lot of it is so deep in the back end that we don't need to know necessarily
Yeah.
how they work. We need to know how to interface with them and we need
Yeah.
to know how to test them. Sometimes we do need to know how they're supposed to work, but
Right.
realistically, there's nothing we can do to change it. Like you have
Right.
to get in. You know, I had an issue with a unit one time where I don't know who that is, but that would be kind of cool.
I think that's Dirk from HVAC Simulator.
Oh, that could be.
Hey,
Oh yeah.
the
But
reason
any-
why I want to know how they work is because I want to weed out the shitty ones. I want to figure out what's good for my house.
I mean, they're all the same.
But you have
I
to know,
don't know, Mike. I don't know.
here's the thing,
I
Mike.
mean, not all, but 90% of them are similar. Like
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
it's like all the other single stage stuff.
Yeah.
You have to know what you need for your house before you can select a piece of equipment.
So we'll throw a little manual S on there, sprinkle a little
Well,
He
magic.
needs a dehumidifier for his house.
I'm
Kevin,
getting one. I'm getting one.
Yeah, he does.
Mike told me, "Don't be a pussy." He said, "Put a 2-ton on your house." That
Do
was
it,
2
man.
years. That was 2
Do
years
it.
ago.
What are you still
What are you
rocking?
waiting
a 4
on?
ton?
I'm waiting on the economy
waiting
to
on
drop.
Are you waiting on a dent and scratch unit from the supply house or what, man?
I'm waiting for the damn prices to drop. Golly, man.
Oh, that's never gonna
I
happen.
mean,
Yeah.
That ain't
Yeah,
never
should've
gonna
pulled
happen.
the trigger 2 years ago. It was
That's
much
what I'm
cheaper
saying,
then.
bro.
Yeah.
I should have listened to Michael.
Yeah.
All right, guys. House, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank
Awesome
you, brother.
time.
We love you, Mike.
Yeah.
You're the man.